It genuinely feels like something has shifted in the Donald Trump-Jeffrey Epstein story. There was a different energy last night. The press actually pressed Trump harder than they have in a long time, and his outburst on Air Force One showed just how much this scandal is weighing on him. Add to that the growing resistance he's getting from Republicans in Congress and even conservatives on Truth Social, and it's clear the pressure is mounting. Trump, the walls are closing in. And every new development only makes things worse for him. Last night, his own attorney made a stunning admission about how they're handling allegations involving minors. And it's easily the most jaw-dropping moment yet. We'll break down that disturbing statement, but first I want to recap all the major updates you need to know, because yesterday was wild and things have only escalated from there. Jen Psaki has the rundown right here.
Today, Trump posted on Truth Social that he would be asking the Justice Department and the FBI to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, Democratic donor Reid Hoffman, and J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, all of those names are also referenced in these Epstein emails. Attorney General Pam Bondi dutifully, of course she did, followed up by announcing she would launch that investigation for her boss, even though she previously said that there was no one left to investigate in this case. Now, set aside for a second the fact that if Trump really wanted to shed light on those men's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, he could simply release the troves of files currently in his Justice Department's possession. But there is one name that is conspicuously absent from that list of Epstein associates. The good folks at Courier Newsroom have compiled all of the more than 23,000 Epstein emails into a searchable database, which is quite a service. And the one name that appears more than any other in all of those emails is Donald Trump's. The Wall Street Journal has even created a handy visualization guide to show just how much each figure is mentioned over time in these emails, also a service. The blue dots here represent each of the Epstein emails that mention former President Clinton. These ones represent each time the emails mention former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. And these ones represent all the mentions of Donald Trump. Far more, by a lot, than any of the people Trump just decided to investigate. And that is just from these 23,000 emails. I mean, who knows how many times Trump has mentioned in the estimated 100,000 files the Department of Justice is still refusing to release. But now that Trump has settled on his chosen deflection, he's finally ready to take questions from reporters on this topic. Well, at least some of their questions.
What did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, who you know, that is Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years. But he also saw strike because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself. Give me a break. You got to find out, what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan Chase.
Sir,
Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Go ahead.
Incriminating in the files, sir. Why acting as
Quiet.
I mean, maybe his staff were thinking maybe not answering questions was the right call after all. Who knows? But look, Donald Trump thinks he can deflect his way out of this the way he always does, by focusing everyone's attention on someone or something else. But so far it isn't working. The House is set to vote as soon as next Tuesday on releasing the full trove of Epstein files. Ahead of that vote, Epstein survivors and loved ones released a letter urging members of Congress to vote yes. And it reads in part this, and it's incredibly powerful. This last April, we lost our sister, Virginia, a true American hero and a beacon of strength to survivors everywhere. Virginia was failed over and over by the systems that consistently believed and supported her abusers over her. Today, we urge you not to fail another survivor and deny them justice any longer. Embody Virginia's courage, be brave, and stand for her in her absence. Vote yes on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Vote for justice, accountability, and the truth.
Donald Trump has largely created this mess for himself in more ways than one. But his attempt to suppress the Epstein files may be the biggest public relations catastrophe of his entire presidency. Every effort to distract, divert, or bury the story has backfired spectacularly, drawing even more attention to what he's trying to keep hidden. And now, the newest spin coming from right-wing media looks like the closest thing to an accidental admission of guilt we've seen yet. Their latest defense? That Trump supposedly wasn't involved with girls that young. That's the talking point. Acknowledging he was around victims, acknowledging he knew what Epstein was doing, but trying to carve out some imagined distinction. And whenever the discussion shifts to Epstein's youngest victims, the energy gets especially bizarre. Case in point, Trump's former lawyer, who also represented Epstein, Alan Dershowitz, whose recent comments blew the entire narrative wide open.
Well, let me give you an example. 10 minutes before you went on, the predecessor on your show described Jeffrey Epstein as a convicted pedophile. He pleaded guilty to one count of having sex for money with a 17-year and 10-month-old person. That's not pedophile.
What he's effectively suggesting is that the sexual assault of a teenager somehow shouldn't be viewed as predatory, even though it absolutely is. And that's the disturbing implication behind this new talking point. They're now pushing the idea that 17-year-olds or even 16 or 15-year-olds shouldn't really be considered children. It echoes what Megyn Kelly implied with her almost legal line, which is absurd. These are still minors. Commentary around Epstein's old emails has also raised serious concerns, including claims that Donald Trump showed inappropriate interest in the young women at Epstein's home. Now, Trump's former attorney is essentially arguing that if someone were involved with a 17-year-old, it somehow wouldn't qualify as a major offense. He acknowledges Epstein committed crimes and pled guilty, yet still tries to minimize the seriousness. This is the new strategy. Redefine what child means. They're no longer claiming Trump was never close to Epstein. They've dropped the "he wasn't in the files," dropped the "he didn't like him," dropped the "he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago" routine. Instead, the message has shifted to, well, 17 isn't really a child. 15 isn't really a child. It's not as bad unless it's extremely young. That is the subtext behind the comments we're hearing from Trump-aligned figures. The idea seems to be, if allegations ever surface involving a 17-year-old, that wouldn't mean he likes children, just younger women. What does that even mean? And why are they suddenly pushing this line now? This is a massive shift in messaging. First, he was never involved. Then, they barely knew each other. Then, they spent time together, but so did everyone. Now, well, being with a minor isn't technically being with a child. It's impossible to ignore how coordinated this shift looks. Do we really think these talking points aren't coming from Trump's inner circle? People like Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and others working to manage the political fallout. This has every appearance of an organized effort to control the narrative, and ironically, this new argument is one of the most incriminating sounding defenses we've heard yet, especially when paired with Trump's own desperate public pleas telling people not to scrutinize him. Yes, we need full investigations into every powerful person tied to Epstein, Clinton, Summers, Hoffman, and anyone else whose name appears in documents. No one should be protected. But when Pam Bondi says, signed, sealed, delivered, we're done here, what she's really admitting is that they chose not to investigate a network of serious alleged offenders.
Well, before I was a politician, I was a public school teacher, and a lot of the work I've done in the state legislature is focused on helping students like the ones I taught in San Antonio and kids just like them all over the state. And so this scandal, this issue with Jeffrey Epstein and his human trafficking of children in this country and around the world, it makes me sick to my stomach. And I feel like we've got to get to the bottom of this pedophile ring. We have to know who enabled it, who supported it, and who covered it up. And that should be a lot bigger than party. It should be a lot bigger than partisan politics. This is not about right versus left. This is right versus wrong. And I hope that we get all the files. I hope we get all the information so that we can hold those responsible accountable.
It's stories about a lot of things. It's also about a set of rules for the rich and powerful and a different set of rules for everybody else. There are a lot of moments right now that are about that, but this certainly highlights it. A core of the message of your campaign is that the political struggle in this country shouldn't be about left versus right, but about top versus bottom. How do you see that all play out here?
Yeah, this is a prime example where those at the top, both people who are at the top of our economy and those who are at the top of our government, collude to help each other. And sometimes that means breaking the law. And so while the rest of us play by one set of rules, the rich and the powerful play by another. And I think Americans across the political spectrum are tired of this broken system, and they're ready to join together across partisan divides, racial divides, gender divides, religious divides, so that we can finally take power back for working people in Texas and across the country.
With a lot of these issues, I mean, whether it's Epstein or SNAP benefits, there are a lot we could talk about. There also seems to be a big overlap between the political and the moral. And this week, and when I saw this, I was really looking forward to asking about it. America's Roman Catholic bishops released a rare and near unanimous statement rebuking the Trump administration's aggressive deportation campaign, something I think we've all been watching with horror now for months, and really framing it as strictly a moral issue. You're, of course, a seminary student, and faith is very integral to who you are and to your politics. How do you think about this overlap between the political and the moral in this moment we're living through right now?
Well, I'm a Presbyterian, but I am so proud of my Catholic brothers and sisters for stepping up in this moment. I'm particularly proud of the new Pope, Pope Leo, and how he has courageously spoken truth to power in this country. You know, there's a question in Scripture right after Jesus teaches us Christians to love thy neighbor. And someone speaks up in the crowd and they ask, who is my neighbor? And to me, that is the profound question in this country and around the world right now. My neighbor is the child going to bed hungry tonight.
They're doing all of this to shield Donald Trump, and now that launching an investigation benefits him politically, you can already see the new excuse forming. We can't talk about anything. We're in the middle of an investigation. That's exactly the direction they're heading. It gives them cover, gives their media allies cover, and conveniently delays accountability under the guise of procedure. This whole situation is beyond chaotic, more extreme than anything we've seen in recent memory. And at this point, the only responsible path is to keep pushing legitimate, unanswered questions to the highest levels. These aren't conspiracies. They're questions that demand transparency. Reporters should be asking Carolyn Levitt directly. They should be asking Donald Trump. They should be asking Pam Bondi. And the press needs to stop tiptoeing and start pressing for real answers. Everyone has to be louder. Everyone has to speak up. And one person who responded powerfully is James Talarico, running for Senate in Texas, someone you should absolutely keep an eye on. These people aren't acting in good faith. Their behavior is disgraceful, and the public has every right to call it out. We're going to keep covering it on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, and if you made it to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.